What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm just going to go over the two teams in my most important leagues that I've drafted and sort of give you a draft recap and explain how I went about making those teams. And then I'll also sort of give you an honest opinion in terms of how I feel those teams turned out. And I'd love to hear your feedback as well. I'd love to hear you guys criticize my team. I'm sure several of my decisions deserve criticism. And I'd love to hear any questions you have about what I did. And if you have any submissions of your own teams, I'm happy to grade those as well. And really excited to get on with week one. We got real football here on Thursday, so that's super exciting, and we're going to be really coming out with a lot more in-season content here going forward. I'll make sure to get a weekly rankings video up on Wednesday, so you guys will know who to start and sit, and I'll also always have those rankings on my website as I'm showing here. I will be adding a new tab here shortly showing all of the rankings. There is also a forum page on the website. If you guys have any questions there, you can ask that as well, but I'm probably more likely to get back to you if you guys message me on Twitter or reply in the comments on the YouTube channel. But again, before I get started, I do want to thank any of you guys for all the support. I think we're at about 260 subscribers, so we're probably going to fall just short of that 300 subscriber goal by the start of the season, but it's like the third goal we set, so super stoked to have gotten this far and really do appreciate all the support. And if this is your first time on the channel, I do want to thank you for stopping by, and I'd like to really ask you just to take the time to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you get notifications when I put out new videos. There will be 3 videos uploaded each week, and I really hope that I can do my best to help you guys win your leagues this season. But with that, let's get into my first team. So the first team I'm going to go over here is the one that is in the league that has the highest buy-in. For me, this is generally the league that takes up a good chunk of my attention throughout the course of the season, so it's definitely one that I prepared for arguably the most, this or the next one, but super close between the two. I am pretty happy with how this team turned out. In general, I went into this draft. It's a 10-team half PPR league with 2 flex positions, so given that it was a 10-team league, I really wanted to emphasize getting Travis Kelce because I do feel like there's a huge tight end advantage, especially in shorter or smaller leagues where the positional drop off at other positions isn't as great as it is for the tight end position or in larger leagues. So it was really important to me to get Kelce and then to make sure I got an elite running back to pair with him. So I ended up spending, I believe I spent a good chunk of my budget. Yeah, I spent $41 on Dalvin Cook. I just went ahead throughout this draft and sort of bid up to around what I was comfortable paying for it with all of these higher end running backs. And Dalvin Cook was the first one that I managed to get at a value. So he was ended up being my RB1. And then I managed to get Kelce at a great value as well. I managed to get Kelce for $30, so only 15% of my budget, and I would have happily gone up to 40 there. So was super stoked to get Kelce there. I then pretty much after that was pretty comfortable going hero RB because Dalvin Cook is a running back I have ranked inside my top 5 and just really comfortable with Dalvin Cook being an anchor there. So I wanted to just get as many receivers as I could after that. So I sort of went about just taking value everywhere I could at the receiver position. I got Stefon Diggs here. I got him a bit undervalued, but I'm super high on Stefon Diggs this year. I think he does have an outside shot to finish as the wide receiver 1 this season. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 4, but he's sort of in tier 1 with those top 3 guys for me. I also got Brandon Cooks at a really great value. I got him for, I want to say, $16, yeah. And just every year, Brandon Cooks is a nice stabilizing force on your roster. He's going to be a mid to low end wide receiver 2 by the end of the season, and I can just count on him week in and week out. So I was really excited to get him. And then somebody I haven't been leaving many drafts with is T. Higgins, but he went for $22 compared to what his pre-draft value was of about 30. I was comfortable going up to about 25 on Higgins, and I do love Higgins, just the talent, and really just pretty stoked to see Higgins, my wide receiver 3 on this roster. It makes me feel really confident in my wide receiver core going into the season, and then managing to get a guy that I'm extremely high on in Amon-Ra St. Brown. I got him to be my wide receiver 4. He had a pre-draft value of about 15. I was willing to go up to about 20 on Amon-Ra, and getting him for 11 was just super exciting for me. But obviously, to get all of these receivers, I did have to sort of punt on the RB2 position. So obviously, I got a guy that I'm not too stoked about in Josh Jacobs. He went for extremely cheap, $6. Got a pre-draft value of about 15, but clearly this league also sort of shares the consensus that I do, even that Josh Jacobs is not going to have a great year this season. So I'm not stoked about him as my RB2, and that is why I really just overpaid for A.J. Dillon here. He had a pre-draft value in this draft of $1, and a couple players and I went back and forth bidding on him, and I ended up getting him for $15 just because I felt like it was really important for me to get that solid low-end RB2 production in case Jacobs ends up being a bust, which he very well might be. And then because of that, I did spend a majority of my draft picks after that pick just trying to fill out some level of depth or upside flyers at the running back position. So I took Melvin Gordon in case something were to happen to Javonte. I took James Robinson in case something were to happen to ETN or if Robinson actually does come back and be the starter. And I also took Nyheim Hines because I really do think Hines is going to be someone I could use as my flex going forward, especially in half PPR and PPR formats. And I think Hines just poised for a great year. I also made sure I got Gallup with my last pick in this draft. It's something I've been doing in a lot of my leagues. The reason I do that is because I can get him, immediately put him on IR, and then I managed to go grab an extra receiver. So I ended up with 6 receivers on my team here. So I'm okay with that, especially given how comfortable I was in the top 4. The part that did suck about this is after I got AJ Dillon, the last quarterback I was super excited about got listed. That was Russell Wilson. He had a pre-draft value of about $2, and he ended up going for 10. And that's not super shocking to me because he was sort of the end of a tier there. But it did suck because it ended up putting me with Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. I think Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins are fine, but if I was going to say there's a weak spot on this roster, it is my quarterback position. So that's something that I'm a little worried about going forward. But I think having this huge advantage at wide receiver and tight end is really going to help me offset that. So I'm pretty happy with this team. Overall, I'd give it about a B plus. I think that I'm kind of gambling at my running back 2 spot, but banking as heavily as I am on AJ Dillon, and I think that every week I'm going to get outscored at the quarterback position on a pretty regular basis. But like I've said, I think that my tight end's going to absolutely carry me throughout the season, along with my receivers, and Dalvin Cook's going to have a great year, so I'm super excited about him. So the second team here that I wanted to go over for you guys is one that I am far less excited about as I compared to the other one. This is my 12-team keeper league. It's full PPR. It's been my home league for years. It's the league that I've been in for like the last 10 years. I'm the league manager in this league as well. So there's always, as you guys know with your home leagues, there's definitely quite a bit of variation compared to what you see in your standard drafts. But this year I did have Jonathan Taylor as my keeper. He was a relatively expensive keeper. It was also an auction draft here, so he cost me $65. And this week we have a $250 budget, so again, he was about a quarter of my budget going into the draft. And then I still, as I've said many times before, I'm super high on Kelce this year, especially in auction drafts. So I managed to get Kelce here. Kelce did cost me about $50. I got him for 48. Yep. So between Kelce and Jonathan Taylor, I'd already spent about half of my money here. And then I also know that in this league, quarterbacks in general go for extremely expensive. If I go look over the draft recap in this league, you'll see that pretty much every team's quarterback went for super expensive. I took Josh Allen for 28. See Lamar went for 16. Dak for 19. Hurts for 20. Burrow was a keeper for 2 because he knew that in our league quarterbacks get crazy. Russ went for 21. Yeah, so the quarterback position's super expensive in general, so that's why I was actually okay overpaying for Josh Allen here and biting that bullet because I knew that if I wanted a top 10 type quarterback, I was just going to have to pay like crazy anyway, so I figured I might as well get the best one. But pretty shortly after that, everybody sort of realized that they had a ton of money left because of all the money they saved on keepers, and none of these high-end guys were really getting out of hand. So we ended up seeing a lot of players get extremely expensive. So overall, I feel like I ended up with a lot of holes in my lineup because of how that played out. I ended up having to spend $35 on Gabe Davis because I just couldn't get a value. I was trying to wait and avoid paying 35 for guys I love like Sutton and Mike Williams and Darnell Mooney and all that. And eventually it got to the point where the last 2 receivers on the board that I liked were Gabe Davis and Allen Robinson, so I sort of had to just put my foot down and get them. And as you can see, I spent $35 on Gabe Davis and 20 on Allen Robinson, and I still didn't have an RB2. So then again, I had to put my foot down and get Chase Edmonds because he's a guy I'm super high on. But I spent $25 on him, and even if he performs up to the level that I see him doing that, I think it's just going to be really hard for me to end up feeling happy with that. But I sort of had to do it. I also made sure that I got Nyheim Hines here because, again, in a full PPR league, I think he's going to be a really valuable flex option, and I think that, especially given that I put so much stock in Jonathan Taylor and how top heavy this roster was, I needed to be able to give myself a chance at surviving a week if Taylor does miss. So really emphasized getting Nyheim Hines. I spent $7 on him instead of 1. And then after that, it was just really trying to find the best value that I could. I spent $6 on Chase Claypool because I think he's got an outside shot to be usable, but I'm not super stoked about that. But I actually do feel like I did a really good job getting these $1 and $2 players on my bench. I'm super high, at least extremely high up, much higher up than consensus on all this entire bench. I think that there's going to be plenty of weeks where Isaiah McKenzie's extremely usable. I'm actually pretty comfortable playing him in the flex this week, and I'm going to. I don't love that. I don't love having to bank on that week 1, but having the Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, McKenzie stack is going to give me a shot at really just blowing up every week. So I do like having Isaiah McKenzie, and I'm pretty high on Devontae Parker, Van Jefferson, and Michael Gallup. Duvernay was sort of just he was my last pick for $1. This league does reward kickoff return yards, so there's a world where Duvernay actually does perform somewhat respectably in this format, but I don't expect to use Duvernay. And then I try to get a couple running backs also to round out my depth here, because I really do only have Jonathan Taylor, so I managed to get Brian Robinson because he's another guy that I can just grab, put on my IR, and then grab another player. And then I went for Kenneth Gainwell and J.D. McKissic because I think both of those guys are going to have usable weeks as a flex, and that's really all I was looking for at that point in the draft. But overall, I think I'd probably give this team about a C or a C plus. I mean, I obviously have the best quarterback in the draft, probably the best running back, and probably the best tight end. So I'm really set there. But my receivers are pretty awful, to put it lightly. I'm really high on Gabe Davis and Allen Robinson, but they're going to have to perform to their ceiling for them to actually be guys that I'm comfortable with as my wide receiver 1 and 2. So I'm not super happy about that. And then I don't really have a ton of depth either. I've got a bunch of late round flyers that I'd like, but I'm not confident in any of these guys panning out. I really like Chase Edmonds, but I didn't want him to be my running back 2, especially with how much I had to pay for him. And really, a world exists where at some point pretty earlier in the season, I end up finding myself trading Josh Allen for a lesser quarterback and an extra receiver, or trading Kelsey for a tier lower tight end and an extra receiver, just because I don't really have the depth. And in general, I hate putting myself in spots where I might have to trade a star for extra startable assets. So I think that it's early enough in the season that I'm going to ride this out, and I think that I do have a lot of upside on my bench, and maybe I can find ways to fill this roster and be pretty happy about it. But in a 12-team league with starting rosters this big, it's really important to have that depth, and I don't have it, so I'm a little nervous going into this, but I do like all of the players on my team. I just think that I kind of overpaid for a lot of guys, and I'm missing some players where I'd like to have them. But again, before I leave here, I do want to invite you to grade both of my teams here. I gave them a B+ on this team and a C on this team. And I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say about my team as well. I'm sure you guys can especially roast me for this one. Not very happy about it, so we'll see what I can do. I'm sure I'm going to make it work, but not super thrilled with how this one turned out. But I love this team. I'm really happy with that one. If you guys have any teams you want me to grade for yourselves, please drop them in the comments. I'm happy to grade them. Super fun to look at everyone's teams, see what you guys managed to make. And I'll be back on Wednesday with some starts of the week, and I'll also have the rankings uploaded to the website so you guys can sort of see which guys you want to start. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me in the comments in this video or in the next video as well about which players you want to start this week. But super excited. The NFL season's here, and let's roll. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.